Hello and welcome to the Wise Leader Virtual Summit. I'm your host, Firm Faith Watson. Today we are privileged to have as our guest, Dr. Jean Mandernach. And she is going to be sharing her amazing story and provide us with some practical words of wisdom to help us lead ourselves and others. Dr. Mandernach, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Great. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
I am the Executive Director of the Center for Innovation and Research on Teaching at Grand Canyon University. And in that role, we kind of have a dual purpose. Part of our role is just doing research on higher education, best practices in teaching and learning, trying to figure out what works, particularly in the online classroom, and maybe what doesn't. But then related to that, I also get to do work in faculty development, helping take that research-based best practices and take it out not only to our faculty at Grand Canyon University, but other faculty as well to just try to improve teaching and learning across higher education.
Yes, I know you do great work, and it's really a privilege to have you here today. And I'm just looking forward to getting into your story. Now, I couldn't help but notice the theme of our conversation. You titled it Exercising Faith to Make the First Step. What impressed you to choose this title?
Well, I think oftentimes we hear people say, you just have to have faith and you just have to believe in God and that will lead you on the right path. And while I think that's true, I also think we have to take an active part in that. And we have to be willing to take action and to take a step and to maybe take a little bit of a leap of faith to get that feedback. It's not simply having faith, but our active role in what we do with that faith, that there's going to be a safety net and there's going to be an outcome and a purpose for what we do. But it also requires us to take a step and to take action.
Wow, the power of the first step. Thanks for reminding us of that. Now, I know that you have a very successful career. You have been promoted. And I also know that Psalm 75 verses 6 and 7 indicates that promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south. But God is the judge. He puts down one and sets up another. So could you share with us some pivotal moment in your journey to help us understand how our Heavenly Father orchestrated your career?
Absolutely. It's one that, as I think often happens for people, you don't see it in the moment. In the moment, life is just happening. And in my case, I'd actually finished graduate school. I'd gotten my first faculty role at Park University, and my husband and I were newly married, and I just had a baby. And I had a 2-month-old baby when I got the phone call that my father had had a major heart attack and had to be rushed in for a 7-way bypass surgery. My father was still relatively young, so this was a big surprise and definitely not something that we were expecting at this stage of our life. And so my husband and I and our little baby, we headed back to visit him at the hospital. And he actually was at the hospital in the same town my husband and I had gone to college in and where we had originally met. But that was about 5 hours away from where we were currently living and working. And while we were there at the hospital, the doctor said he probably only has another maybe 10 years, 15 years, just the valves they use and the way they do all that stuff, it just wears out. And they said after that, he'll have to do this again, or he'll have to look at, end of life options. And as we were there, my husband and I were like, what is the next step? Like, do we just go back to Kansas City and just know that this is ending? Well, I had left the hospital and gone to a convenience store down the road just to get a pop, get away from the hospital a little bit. And oddly enough, I ran into one of the faculty members who worked at the university here in town, the one that my husband and I had both graduated from. And she was asking how things were going and how my career was. And I said, really good. And she said, well, if you ever need a job, just let us know. And I said, well, you know what? If there's ever an opening, you let me know, because maybe we do want to come back home. Maybe we want to be near family. I think my father's heart attack was a real kind of eye opener of like what's important in your life and what do you prioritize. And that was kind of the end of our conversation. And I left the gas station and, headed back. And fortunately, my father's surgery went really well and everything was going fine. And 3 weeks later, the phone rang. And it was that professor I had ran into at the convenience store. And she said, you are not going to believe this, but we just had somebody retire. and we do not have time to do a full search and replace that position.
Wow.
She goes, we have to do a 1-year appointment. And after that 1-year appointment, if you take it and you're interested, we will write that job description and tailor it so that there's almost no way somebody could beat you out of your job. Because she knew it would have to take a lot for me to leave my current position for a 1-year appointment. I was on a tenure track position.
Wow.
And I kind of talked to my husband about it, and he was like, I don't know, we have this baby, and he had his job. And this happened right before Easter. And so it was probably 4 days later, we headed back up to Nebraska for Easter. We were going to my parents' house, and we are sitting at Easter dinner, and the phone rings. This was pre-cell phone era. So it's literally the phone on the wall rang. And my mom answers it, and she goes, yes, he is here. And it was for my husband. And so we're first of all like, who even knew we were here? How did, like, they're calling him at Easter dinner at my parents' house? Like, so weird. It was a principal at a little school in Nebraska. And he said, I heard through the grapevine you might be coming back to Nebraska. We need a science teacher and we don't have time to advertise it. Are you interested in the job? And of course, my husband's like, well, I don't know. I'll have to talk to my wife. And he said, well, on your way back to Kansas City, that's where we were living at the time, he said, why don't you stop and talk to me? So on Easter Sunday, after my husband and I are leaving, driving back to Kansas City, we pull into this little town. My husband goes in to meet with this guy on Easter Sunday. I'm sitting in the car holding my 3-month-old baby. And he comes out and he said, I've got the job if I want it. He goes, you and I both just got jobs back in Nebraska where we said we were going to look at in less than a week. Like, neither of us applied. Neither of us, this guy said he just heard through the grapevine we were back in the state even. And I look back at that and I say, there is no way that that was all coincidence. There was a reason that we came back to Nebraska. There was an eye-opening purpose for us saying out loud, we should come back here. And had my dad not had the heart attack, we never would have been in Nebraska that weekend. I never would have ran into this professor. And I think not only was that pivotal in that I had a new job, but to make it even crazier, I went back to my university that I was at and I said, I'm going to need to get out of my contract. I have a new job. We need to move home. There's family reasons. And my provost said, I'm sorry, we're not letting you out of your contract. And I literally had this moment of like, what? Like, I already told the other people yes. Like, I don't even know how this works. And he said, but he goes, I 100% agree that you need to move home and be near your dad. He goes, I would never challenge that. He goes, would you be willing to try to be our first remote faculty? And he goes, you could take your tenure track position. You can move back to Nebraska. And he goes, we've never done this before, but let's just see how it goes. He said, we don't want to lose you. So yes, move back to Nebraska, but no, don't leave us. So at that point, I called the other university. They said, okay, well, we're really desperate. Could you at least cover classes? So I go back to my first university and he says, sure, if you can cover classes, go for it. And that's how I became a remote faculty, which I think is completely pivotal in my career success. Because one of the things that was very, very important to me was having a family. And as we all know in higher education, especially for women, it can be really hard to juggle children and family and work and be able to really invest in all of them at the level and the way we want to invest in them. And what being remote allowed me to do was it allowed me to fully invest in being a mother and a wife while also being able to be in my profession and not have to give that up. So I've actually now worked remotely since 2003. So almost 20 years now I've been remote. And in that time, I've raised 4 children. We've built a house. I've gotten tenure. I've changed jobs. I have been promoted. And I think it was because I had the unique opportunity that I never had to feel the guilt of being a mother by leaving and having to go to work. Now, don't get me wrong. My kids went to daycare. And even though I was working, I was still working. But because I was a remote worker, I also could drop them off at school. I could pick them up for school. I could show up at lunch on their birthdays. I could go to every program. I could volunteer for reading because I had this incredibly flexible lifestyle. And that flexible lifestyle then also allowed me to pick out the things that I cared about and really invest in them. And so because I could invest in work without the guilt of what I was missing with my family, and I could invest in my family, but without the guilt of what I was missing for work, I think it allowed me to really flourish in both. And when I look at that whole path, I never thought I was going to be a remote faculty. I never asked to be a remote faculty. I didn't apply. It all goes back to my dad's heart attack. And I believe God put us in the right place at the right time for the right reason for all of these things to pan out, so that now 20 years later, I can look back and go, I don't have any regrets on either thing. I have not felt the strain that many people feel when they're having to try to juggle the demands of being in an office from 8 to 5, while also trying to juggle the demands of a growing family.
Wow. Amazing. What an amazing story. Wow. It's like.
And the best part of the story, my father is doing fine 17, 18 years later. He's had no other heart issues. He is doing fine. He has not had to have another surgery. He has a really high quality of life. Life is good. And so that event that caused all of this, it also has not had a bad ending. His health now is as good as it was before he had his heart attack. So.
Wow. That's providence right there. I really like that story. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And this other question ties into what you just shared, in terms of what led to your promotion. I know it might be a little bit awkward for you to answer, but what are some of the things you think that God may have used to promote you? Because it's not by chance, first of all, why that lady ran into you and was able to think of you confidently for a position. It's not by chance when you went back to the university that you were currently working, they said, we want to keep you, right? So help us understand, what are some of the things, and again, I know it's awkward, but what are some of the things that you think God may have used to promote you? What are things that probably people tend to appreciate about you or have probably noted about you?
Yeah. I think it's a unique combination. A combination of traits I was born with. So I'm going to give God credit for those as well. But I am very creative and simultaneously very analytical. And I think it's a unique combination when somebody has both the ability to think really divergently and to think outside the box and to think about all the range of possibilities and the what ifs, while also having the skill set to be able to analyze all of those to make a decision. And so it's not just that I can think about things from a variety of angles, but then also analyze them and really break apart the pros and cons of each of those options so that I can do something with it. Kind of going back to the title of our talk, so I can take a step, because I think sometimes people have a lot of creativity and they kind of get to this point that they don't do anything with it because there's so many options and so many possibilities that they're almost frozen with too many potential options. And on the other hand, I think sometimes people can be so analytical that they don't want to take the risk because they can't imagine what the other possibilities would be. And I think I was born with a unique set of traits that I'm both creative and analytical.
Wow. While you were talking, this question came to me, so I'm going to put you on the spot now. I know you're a sought after keynote speaker. How does the theme of our conversation, taking the first step, contributed to you being a keynote speaker?
Well, I think part of it is my willingness to put myself out there a little bit. Again, there's a lot of people with expertise. Higher ed is just overflowing with knowledgeable, skilled, talented people who maybe then don't put themselves out there. They don't necessarily write the conference application. They don't say yes when people do invite them to come and have informal conversations. And I think I enjoy taking a step. I enjoy taking a risk and trying new things. And I think what has happened is because I've been willing to put myself out there, then people were able to find me and match up their needs with my skill sets. But had I not taken that first step, they wouldn't even know what skill sets I had or what knowledge I could possibly share with them. So I had to be willing to put myself out there and just try it a little bit, whether it was going to be successful or not, before others came looking for me because they were able to see what I do and see how I interact and what I know and what I can offer them, that then they were able to, reach back out to me to see how I could work with their faculty.
So how did you put yourself out there?
Honestly, the first steps were conferences.
Pardon?
Conferences. Hands down, my very first step were academic conferences. So often, I think we have a tendency to do the whole like, well, I don't need a conference presentation. I don't need it for promotion or tenure or whatever it is. And maybe we aren't even doing any research that we believe is earth shattering. So we just don't fill out the conference application. For me, it was absolutely saying like, yeah, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to share what I'm doing, and I'm going to get feedback from other people and see what they think about it, and really start those conversations and that dialogue. So if I had to give somebody like, what's the first step in being a public speaker? Go speak. Find places that you can speak, and then people will find the match that works for them. And I think I was fortunate in that what I was speaking about was teaching and learning, particularly online learning, at a time when that was growing for a lot of places. So the topic I was talking about was something that was needed. And a lot of the people that were working in online learning weren't going to the conferences. And so by default, I was the name they were finding when they were looking at who was speaking.
Wow, and you are so right. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a living witness of what she's talking about, because that's how I met you. I don't know if you remember. Yeah, I literally met you at a conference.
Yes.
Yeah, and and I'm just so grateful that you decided to go to that conference, because here we are again today. And what was interesting about our meeting, because we spoke before you participated in another summit, after we spoke, that's when I found out that you had co-authored a book that was recommended to me by someone. So I was like, wow, what are the odds? There you go again. How God tends to work things out. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So could you share a few lessons or words of wisdom that have helped you on your leadership journey?
I think for me, it's somewhere along the lines of like needing to be decisive. And I'll share a little story with that. All the way back in graduate school, when we're not confident of our knowledge and we don't really know what we do and don't know, my dissertation advisor had said, you need to just kind of brainstorm a list of ideas of things you might want to research for your dissertation. And I said, okay. And being very, novice at that point, I had a list of about 25 ideas. And I was like, okay, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? And he read through them and he looked at me and he said, what do you think? I said, well, I don't know. And he said, what I think is you just created a whole list of possibilities, but I need to know, what do you want to do with it? Because the possibility you want to move forward with is going to be your best idea. And he's like, I just need you to make a decision and take a step. Like going back to the title here.
Yeah.
It wasn't that any idea was more or less amazing than the others. Actually, it was grad school. There were probably none of them were amazing. But what he instilled in me was that it doesn't have to be amazing. Take a step and do something with it. So go and research that idea, go and find out, because that's going to lead to the next step and the next set of research. And that topic will lead to the next one. And so you have to be willing to take that first step. And part of taking that first step is being decisive, along with the leap of faith that whether I make the right decision or the wrong decision, in the end, it's going to be okay. Because even the wrong decision is going to lead me to the guidance and feedback that I need to take another step and to make another decision. But if I was going to give somebody some really firm, it'd be like, make a decision, take a step. It doesn't have to be right. And let's face it, in higher education, there's probably 20 right steps. It's not that there is even a right step to take, but we have to take a step and make a decision and do something. And only then will we get guidance or feedback and being able to move forward.
Yeah, I love that. Amazing. I just love your theme too. The next step. I remember this analogy that someone used. He said, if you're standing at point A and you're looking at point B, but it's very blurry, you can't really see it, how does it become clearer? But do you stand where you are? When you start to go towards that sign, then it becomes clearer. So I like that. And someone else said, if it's not the thing, it's the thing that leads to the thing.
Right. Yeah, what a great way of putting it. That decision might not have been the one, but it's going to give you guidance and feedback that might lead to the one.
Yeah. So in terms of leadership lessons, you're talking about being decisive and being able to take that first step. I just want to make sure, would you like to share any other leadership lessons, or that's the main one that you just want to share?
The other one I would throw in there is also just being willing to listen. Because I think sometimes, and that kind of feels like it's an opposite when I say be decisive, take a step. But I don't think all of those should just be like, just random taking a step, making a decision. I think part of being a good leader is listening and really taking it in so that the decision is not random, but the decision is something that you can provide feedback and guidance, not because you're the expert, but because you were really willing to listen and find out what their needs were and what their purpose was and what they hope to do with that information. And so I think it's a combination of really trying to tune in and have a relationship with people, and then empowering them to feel confident in their decisions so they can take a step with that. Not leading by having them rely on you, but leading by empowering them.
Wow. So being decisive and being able to listen.
Yeah.
Oh. Thank you for sharing. So what do you tend to appreciate or admire in a leader?
Well, let's start with the things I just said. I really admire when somebody listens. I admire when they don't come at it with giving me the advice, but rather them guiding me and trying to listen and lead me through so I make my own decision, not that I follow the decision or advice that they gave me. And I also think good leaders simply lead by example. They're also willing to take the risk. They're also willing to try things out and share those vulnerabilities when things don't work out and when they did end up with taking a different path. So I think leading by example, but also really consciously thinking about the purpose of those that you're leading and what they're needing from you as a leader so that you can be responsive rather than just moving them down your path or your trajectory as a leader.
Wow. Wow. So I know that this might not be easy for you, to come up with a favorite Bible verse. But if there is such a thing, could you share with us your favorite Bible verse or verses and tell us why?
Well, one of my favorites is Romans 12, verse 12. And I actually printed it out next to me to read it exactly for you. But it's be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. Because I think when I look at a challenge or when I look at an opportunity, whatever it might be, so often we don't know, is this the right thing? Is this going to be the thing that brings me hope? Is this going to be a problem and it was the wrong choice? And but I like the idea that we have faith no matter how it ends up. If you're faithful in prayer and it ends up great, then just rejoice in that and rejoice in how that decision turned out or how that challenge turned out. And if it didn't, that's okay too, because as long as you're faithful in prayer and really consistent with that, then you're going to weather that challenge and it's going to lead to the next opportunity.
Yeah. It's almost like in the Bible, when Abraham had to take that first step, right? He didn't know where he was going. And then he encountered famine, right? It didn't mean that the first instruction that he heard to take that first step was wrong, right? But just being able to take that step, even if you encounter challenges, doesn't mean that you made the wrong decision, right?
Absolutely.
And it will all work out. Thanks for sharing that. How about a favorite proverb and why?
Well, now that you've heard me talk about taking the first step many times, it's not going to surprise you that my favorite proverb is a journey of 1,000 miles all begins with the first step. And it doesn't matter where we're going, we have to take action or we're not going to go anywhere. And so even if it's not ultimately going to be the right first step, we still have to start with the first step.
Wow. I hope this is helping someone today who is, as a matter of fact, this ties into the next question. And I know you have been saying this somewhat before, but this is your opportunity to really help someone. This person is trying to make a decision. They're struggling. Perhaps the decision is not even necessarily between good or bad, but they're trying to make a decision. could you just walk us through a few things that this person could consider in order to make a decision?
Well, I think it starts with considering the options. And not only is that just a brainstorming possibility of like, what are all the potential options? We often think of a decision as this or that. Usually they're not that simple. Usually it's this would imply this, this, and this. This would imply this, this, and this. And then taking that faithfully into prayer and thinking about, what do I do with this and how do we move forward with this? And really being open to whatever guidance that you receive in that, and then being willing to take that step. So I don't think it's a matter of just saying, well, just take a step, but really starting with, I'll go back to when I said what I think my skills are, creativity and analytical thinking, starting with the creativity and then really thinking through what are all the possibilities and what are the consequences of all these possibilities. And then breaking that down, thinking about the pros, the cons, the unintended side effects, and then taking that to prayer and praying not only with God, but having some reflection time on that. And then having the faith to do something and not get paralyzed by this decision being so big or so large or so overwhelming that you're not willing to take that first step.
Wow. Because I think people struggle even when they look at the options, they look at the pros and the cons, and everything is leading to point A, but then really, I'm not sure. I'm going to pray about it, as you said.
Right.
And they pray about it and pray about it and pray about it. But you brought up the important point that they have to be willing to take the first step.
Yeah, I'm not one that actually believes that through the prayer we're going to get the answer. But I do believe through the prayer, we're going to have the faith that no matter what choice we made, we're supported. So I do not believe that that's going to magically mean we just have to open ourselves up and the answer will come to us. But rather, I've prayed about it. I have belief. I have faith that no matter what choice I make, I'm going to be okay. And it's going to be all right. So I do think it's kind of a combination back to our step combined with faith in that support and faith in that higher power and belief that regardless of the step, there's a purpose and there's a reason.
Yeah. And speaking of, purpose, reason, I wanna bring this back to, you mentioned your amazing experiences earlier on, but what if somebody is listening to this conversation and they're like, oh yeah, I'm not sure that God is the one who orchestrated your career. What would you say to somebody who really doubts that it's really God that has been orchestrating? He's the one that promoted you and all of that stuff.
I think it goes back to like, how many coincidences in a row can you have before you have to accept that there was something else going on, that it wasn't just a coincidence? I mean, I truly think back and somebody could say, oh, what a coincidence that you went for a pop at the same time that professor. What a coincidence a job opening came up. What a coincidence they heard you were in Nebraska. I don't believe you can have that many simultaneous coincidences. I think when we see a series of coincidences, it's often God orchestrating a plan and giving us opportunities to see and listen to that plan and to really prayerfully believe that there was a reason that we had all of those interactions, that was not simply chance or randomness.
And I'm going to put you on the spot again. So somebody might also be listening and saying, whoa, so what about me? God did all of that for her. I could see his providence here, there, and here in her career. But for me, it's not so simple. I'm really experiencing some challenges right now. I would love somebody to offer me a job and, different things like that. What would you say to this person who would have listened to your story and say, wow, good for her, but my situation is so different?
I think it's, in my case, we often get to see, like the blessings seem so obvious, but truly when God does a lot of his works, the blessings aren't on the ones that are having the easy route. They're having the challenging route. They're having difficulties. They are uncertain. They feel like there's not a right answer. And so I think truly it's continuing to be open and being faithful that the reason you're having that challenge is because there is going to be a reason and an outcome. That perhaps you're having that challenge to simply open your eyes to see that possibility when it does come in front of you. And so that you're willing and open for that. I firmly believe that God is orchestrating a path for all of us. And some of them are more or less clear than others. Some, like in my case, led to a very clear, like remote work environment. I don't know that that's other people's paths. So I think they very much have to be open to even the challenges and the struggles are part of the purpose, and they're part of what's going to lead them to what is their purpose and in their long-term purpose, not just their career purpose, but their purpose in life.
Okay, and that made me think of another question again. So looking at where you are right now, even your current position and perhaps even future plans that you have related to that, did you see this career coming? Is this, how you ended up being where you are? Do you have any sense that that's the direction that your career would have taken?
No.
You mean there's no path? There's no path to your position?
Well, I think there is in the sense of how it has worked out, but had you asked me long ago, was this the plan? The answer would have been no. I never once said, I hope someday I'm a researcher. I hope someday I run a teaching and learning center. In fact, it wasn't until graduate school where I said, I hope to be a professor someday. If you look back at, my high school aspirations, I have a son graduating from high school this year. So we're doing a lot of talk about majors and career goals and things like that. I said I was going to be an engineer major, and my backup was an artist. Wow. So I was like, nowhere near that. And actually what happened is I went to college on an engineering, I was on an engineering path. The college I chose to go to had a physics program, but they didn't have an engineering program. So I was declared a physics major. Wow. Then I transferred universities. And when I transferred, I simply didn't do the paperwork to declare my major. So I was an undecided major, which was fine by me. I was still doing my general studies. And at the end of 2 years of general studies, my advisor said, oh, you have to declare a major. What is it that you wanted to do? And I was like, I don't know. And they said, well, what classes do you enjoy? All of them. And he kind of laughed. And I said, no, really, like I like math. I like psych. I liked soc. I liked English. I liked all of them. And then he said, well, what are you good at? And you'll laugh, but the psychology became my major that day because that morning I had general psychology class, and it was one of these huge lecture halls. And the professor had said, the following 2 people don't need to take the final exam because they have an A in the class, whether they get a 0 on it or not. And I was one of those people. And so just a few hours later, when my advisor says, well, what are you good at? I went, I guess psychology. And that's how I ended up being a psych major. And it wasn't until graduate. So then I finished my undergrad degree saying I was going to be a clinical psychologist. And I think that was mainly because I didn't know what other careers you did with a psychology degree. I was very focused on the fact that I needed to get a job. And so I went to master's school, and I was in my internship getting my master's degree in clinical psychology when I remember thinking, like, I don't want to listen to people's problems my whole life. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And I went and talked to my advisor, and he was like, well, let's talk about what you like and what you enjoy. And after a long conversation, he was like, you enjoy learning. He goes, that's what you enjoy. And he goes, one career path that lets you learn forever is being a researcher. But I had never once said, I want to be a college professor, or I want to be a researcher. And so even if you go back to earlier, like, coincidences, the fact that I ended up in psychology was not this pre-planned. I just liked learning, and I liked psych, and I was good at it. And then I didn't know what you did with that. So I just went to graduate school, and that was the first time I think I went, ooh, I don't like this. And it was just, I didn't like being a clinical psychologist. But so when you ask, like, when did you know? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know that I ever made the decision. When I was getting my PhD, I got a teaching assistantship, and I was working with their, like, mastery learning general psychology program. And it just happened that this was the era when computers became big in colleges, and they were wanting to put it on computer. And so part of my teaching assistantship was helping convert this program to a computer-based program, which then led to a dissertation on computer-based learning, which led to a job, which, as you know, then led me into online learning. But there was never a moment that I sat down and went, I should research online learning. It was my TA position, and then it's something needed done. And so I look at my entire career path, and I really do say it was a willingness to take advantage of opportunities. And I think those opportunities were put in front of me for a reason. And what allowed me to be successful is continuing to say yes and take a different step and try something. Because I literally never sat down and said, I hope to be a professor one day. It just kind of happened as I tried out new things that didn't work. So even if you go back to people that say, oh, what if I'm on the wrong path? I did that too. I sat down with my advisor and went, I'm 2 months from graduation and I just now decided I don't want to do this anymore. But we had a conversation. He said, well, really, you like learning, and that's going to be a researcher, and let's put you in touch with graduate programs and PhD programs. And so all of them, I think, can be traced back to a willingness to take a step and try something when the opportunity arose. And so I really believe that God put those opportunities in front of me, and it was my job to take a step and do something with them.
Wow, amazing. And I just want to stop for a moment to thank you for saying yes to this summit. Thank you. So you're living what you're preaching. You're not just saying, say yes. As soon as I reached out to you, you said yes. And because of that, we can benefit from hearing your amazing story and how God has been leading you. And I know that He will continue to lead you. So where could people find out about your work, what you do?
We have a lot going on. That's the good news. I always say we have a lot of job security working in online teaching and learning because it continues to evolve and develop. All of work that we do can be found on the website for my center, which is cirt.gcu.edu. And you can go there and learn more about me and my team and the research that we're doing and some of the faculty development initiatives that we're involved in.
Wow. And viewers, I will be linking to that below this video, so you could check out that link if you want to find out more about her great work. All right. So thank you very much for sharing such practical words of wisdom today. And I just wonder if you could leave our viewers with a call to action, a word of encouragement, or just a word of wisdom.
Yeah, my word of wisdom truly is, don't be afraid to take a step. It doesn't have to be the right step. It doesn't have to work out perfectly, but you're never going to know if you don't take a step. And so my best advice I could give you is, when in doubt, do something. And it doesn't mean it has to be dramatic. Oftentimes the steps are small. Maybe you're in your current role and you say, well, I'm just going to present at the conference for the first time ever, or I'm going to take my work and I'm going to write it up and submit it to a journal and take a risk and see if I can get published. But when we start taking those steps, I think each step is us taking advantage of an opportunity that was given, which then just can lead to the next opportunity. So don't be afraid to take a step.
Wow, well said. The theme of this conversation and your practical words of wisdom, it just reminds me of this song that is sung by the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir, Lead Me, Lord. And it starts with, it's hard to take the first step when I don't know the way. Each turn is so uncertain. I've learned to walk by faith, but you gave me the promise that you would never leave. You would lead and guide me. Lord, I do believe. And then the chorus goes on, lead me, Lord, I'll follow.
That
Amazing.
is perfect.
Yes, and I just love how you were able to remind us of that important thing to do, take the first step, because sometimes we get, we delay. We delay. So thank you so much for sharing such practical words of wisdom with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. And viewers, I encourage you to share this conversation with others, and we thank you so much for joining us in this conversation, and I hope that you'll be able to join us in the next one. See you soon.